Yeah, exactly.
You were coming this way, we were coming that way.
Hey, aren't you that girl from that interview?
Welcome to Happiness in the City. This is Barbara, and today I'd like to focus our attention on a very important topic, and that is the topic of respect. There is a lot of strange communication and even commercial lack of understanding of this very concept. We have to engage in a process of education in a very unique time of human history. We have international communication channels opened in ways that has never been before. Therefore, we connect with diverse cultures in an unprecedented way. However, what we don't know is diverse ways in which respect is understood in those cultures. And sometimes this lack of understanding and ignorant behavior that follows it is misunderstood as hate speech, when in fact a lot of this is ignorance about diverse ways in which respect is expected and required in different cultures. I come from a very complicated family background, and I had to learn to deal with different nations from early girlhood. So I learned to maneuver myself between demands of my mother and my grandmother, who come from very different traditions, and sometimes I made mistakes anyway, and then I had to create ways to appease both my mom when she was angry, when I was expressing admiration to my grandmother's ways, and then I had to appease my grandmother when she was upset that I was following my mother's ways. And that taught me the very early childhood days that we need to be very sensitive to the diversity of expectation around matters of respect. Many people today have goodwill, like I had goodwill to have good relationships with all my family members, but then things are happening that are more complicated than our goodwill expectation. And today we have millions of people who have goodwill. They want to get along with other cultures, and then they say something or do something that in that other culture is considered a sign of or a form of disrespect. Now, that person of the origin of a certain disrespectful comment or way didn't really mean to insult anyone, but was ignorant of the respect expectations in another culture. So we have to all calm down and start Respect 101 in all countries from the beginning, because that education and acceptance of different ways is first step in making reconciliations and not forcing change in ways of respect that would create a lot of alienation, banning, sometimes even wars. So we have to look back at very basic meanings of that word. Let's look at some of the basic definitions, and I always encourage you to look at definitions of words, because you'd be surprised how many things can be resolved just by understanding the proper definition. And look at here at the word respect. One moment. Oh, here it is. Okay. So here we have respect, a feeling of deep admiration for someone or something elicited by their abilities, qualities, or achievement. And the second part of this particular definition in this is to admire, to due regard for the feelings, wishes, rights, or traditions of others. And the verb is admire someone or something deeply as a result of their abilities, qualities, or achievements. So we have a situation in which we have international communication, and now all countries expect admiration. But there is ignorance about the diverse meanings and diverse measures and ways to evaluate it. Like, show me one place that is even interested in doing it. But there are many places that immediately started attacking those who don't express that respect properly. And that attack is often very violent. Many people lost their jobs, some lost their lives out of despair. Many were just cast out. And all they did is show need to be educated about certain topics. Even the most admirable ways of appeasing such mistakes so far has been met with total contempt and condemnation. And I think this is not good, because it breaks hearts over a situation that should be resolved by creation of space for mutual respect. And we can do that. We can create that need that before we judge somebody, before we disrespect somebody's culture, we have to know what we are doing. Because if a person is ignorant, has no knowledge, and just thinks that he or she is actually admiring that culture, and then is attacked because of the lack of proper respect, then the connection of education is broken. In other words, that creates despair. And a lot of what is happening today, that anger connected with social media, is actually despair, that once a person makes a mistake like this and is cut off, there's no remedy. There's no way to create redemption. There's no way to learn to understand ways of another culture better. And that is what is actually creating a lot of sense of disconnection, which social media is supposed to be a tool of connection and education and learning. So we have to look at that concept, respect. And respect is actually a concept that requires respecting everybody. In other words, we have to learn that all of us are in the image of God. So we all deserve respect on that account alone. And then there are many other ways to respect a person. But those of you who are Christians know that God's deep respect to his own creation was so powerful that he created his son, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, who overcame death on the cross. He was resurrected. So he overcame the ultimate condemnation of what human nature can be subject to. And that is condemnation from God himself. So I think we have to look at this. If God creates a pathway of redemption, we should create pathways of redemption too at a lesser level with his help. But we shouldn't be creating a situation in which there is no redemption at all. because then it creates emptiness and and a sense of alienation that is really not going to end up in a good place. So we have to start looking at that word respect as more important than the sword of condemnation. Because if suddenly over the last 20 years we've developed such amazing international contacts, and now the only way to resolve conflicts is to cut, to fine, to punish. In other words, all this the measures of sword of justice, and there is no way to create education, connection, loving opportunities for friendship, then this whole thing is going to end up in a black hole, like what is happening in the universe. So this is not the right way to go. We need to go into the way that expands respect and ways to create redemptive measures if this respect is not properly understood. And then we have to also learn to respect differences as they are. In some cultures, it is appropriate to talk in an affectionate way only with family members. In other cultures, it is appropriate to be very friendly with strangers. In some cultures, it is inappropriate to visit each other's houses without being a member of the family. In other cultures, organization of parties is normal. In some cultures, it's okay to smile at a stranger. In other cultures, it would be considered disrespectful. So this is a vast domain of learning that we need to absorb. And then we'll have a situation, if someone smiles at a person from a culture where it is not appropriate, that person from that culture shouldn't feel offended, because he or she will understand that in the culture of that person doing this is considered very respectful. So we need a certain education on that concept of respect, and the most important education that that kind of training should be applied by are all media, because today it is very strange to watch a lot of the programs on television media, because it seems like there is a side taken against anyone who would express disrespect about another culture, but then the other culture may not feel offended at all, or maybe doing things similar to the person who was provoked to such a statement or response. So in order to create peace in this situation, we have to be very sophisticated about it. You don't go to a doctor who has no medical education to examine you. The same here. You don't believe in condemnations of somebody who has no knowledge of diverse cultures and has no respect of those differences that would need to be connected through peaceful bridge making, not through condemnation. So if we want to create world peace today, and we have the opportunity to do it because we have the global communication media and global financial mechanisms and global political mechanisms, we can do that. But if we will ignore the fact of different ancestral traditions of diverse nations and tribes and cultures, then this project will fail, because there is a powerful force of life connected with cultures. And that force of life has certain rules and regulations too. And if they are disturbed, all kinds of symptoms of unhappiness and disturbance follow. One of the ways in which this manifests is people withdraw from social life altogether and start getting into all kinds of negative, bad behaviors. And that is not the point of life. The point of life of our human nature is to be social, to interact with families, friends, with God. And if this is not happening right, we have to understand something is wrong. Another thing is people start alienating themselves from their biological families, and that affects their life too, and especially their heart and identity. And that is not good too. There are certain rules in the law of nature of transmission of life that must be respected, or there are negative consequences coming to it. So we now also have the word respect used to what we are as human nature, what the earth is as earth nature, what animals are as animal nature. There are certain shapes and forms that are created in natural law that must be understood too, and if disrespected, there are consequences. There are remedies. Even God Himself showed us His remedies from divine kingdom when we deal with shortcomings of nature. Many bad situations are miraculously healed by God. We have medical profession that deals with limits of nature by developing medication and good advice of doctors. And we have also civil laws that create certain civil rights that we can access when limits of nature cannot be resolved by the person's own life. So we have to become filled with spirit of wisdom over all of those matters connected with a phenomenon of respect. And that would also mean that all people who work for governments should have that education, because if they don't, that there's no strength in the authority becomes very destabilized and is mistrusted, because by solving one side ignores needs of another side, ignores problems of creating the right image and vision of respect throughout the world, and then people are very dissatisfied with that too. So we have to understand that there are higher ways, more noble ways of dealing with somebody's disrespectful actions than just condemnation, cutting off pathways to popularity, shaming. And I believe that should be our priority. A lot of amazing things can be rescued, and many wonderful people can regain their faces and their honor if this is applied. there has been an avalanche of situations in which very accomplished people were put in total shame over some really bad things. But that is not the way God deals with us. We are all sinners. We all fell short of the glory of God. And God doesn't come in with contempt and condemnation to us while we are alive. He comes to teach us better ways. Before this program, I was reading about Saint Augustine. Augustine Aurelius, who wrote about 200 books. Before he was converted to Christianity, he was a pretty, what I should say, he was a man with all kinds of inappropriate situations in his life. Did God give up on him? No. God kept sending people to show him the right way, his way. And when he was willing to learn it and listen, then God also gave him life and light to do it. And that's another difference between God, who is a patient teacher and life giver, and those who condemn to cut off life and light. You know, right there, that remedy that doesn't give any opportunity for redemption and only cuts is not of God. And when we apply divine way of giving second chances, showing better ways, showing how to connect to light and life that is peaceful and noble and beautiful, then amazing things happen. And what happens with St. Augustine's life? He wrote hundreds of amazing books that I was able to learn from when I was taking courses at Harvard University. And that is the way to do it in the right light. There are many examples of people like this. Look at the person who was hanging on the cross right next to Jesus Christ when he was on the cross. He was a thief. And when he expressed admiration and respect of God, God in that moment gave him grace of forgiveness and took him to paradise with him. He didn't tell him, like, hey, you stinky thief, you shouldn't even think about coming to paradise. He, being God himself, understood the heart willing to do the right thing and repent, showed the way of redemption, and Saint Dismas ended up in paradise. The other criminal didn't want to do it. So we have to have that pathway of redemption for those who are willing to learn from their mistakes, and we should stop assuming that whoever commits certain inappropriate things is doomed forever. And in closing, I'd like to also think about how we can look at rules and regulations from the point of view of respect. Because if there are rules and regulations whose only purpose is to destroy, to condemn, to demean, to shame, I don't have any room in my heart for this, because that would not be noble. So instead, we have to have rules that promote beautiful things, good things, wonderful things. And when we have those kinds of rules, that way that is inappropriate will be seen in the right light and in the right platform, that always will try to bring that person that made some mistakes into the higher way of life, to noble life. And that would create a completely brand new atmosphere in the whole world. and people would look at each other with gaze of love and beautiful nobility. And then that hating condemnation will no longer be there. It will not be part of the global vision. And that's the way I would be going, and that's what I'm promoting, the beautiful vision of friendship and learning and respect of identities of all people on earth. And when we learn to do that, completely new way of light will come to earth from God, because God will not show his presence when there is sin of that kind of nature in which people condemn each other. But God will come with flame of love to places that recognize his ways. And his ways are always opening ways of neighborly affection, beautiful, noble interactions, beautiful ways, and identities that know how to affirm their lives in the way God created us, not in the way other people want us to have our identities reshaped, but in the way our parents gave us life. And that is God's way. Honor thy mother and thy father. So let's return to honor and respect and neighborly love.